The first time I noticed something strange was on a Tuesday. I was on my way back from town with a box of live bait and a liter of gasoline in my thermos, because that's how we live here, on the basis of improvisation and stubbornness. As I rounded the gravel bend that leads to my barn, I saw a truck stopped with its rear facing the door. I thought it was a GPS error, a lost truck driver, perhaps. I got down with a smile and a, "Is everything all right there?" expecting to hear a half-hearted reply, but the driver only replied, "Delivery to Unit C Depot, sir." "Unit C? What the hell is that?" I looked at the label on the box. My address, my name as the recipient. None. Just my land, my barn. But the cargo was huge. Sealed plastic boxes, a label full of codes, and a giant QR code that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. And what did the man do? He unloaded it. 3 pallets. He punched the note into the system and left. I thought it was a mistake. I called the carrier and was ignored. I waited. The next day, 2 more trucks, with the same uniforms, the same lack of response, and more boxes coming into my barn as if I'd signed a contract with Amazon and forgotten about it. Friday was the last straw. I woke up to truck horns and men's voices shouting, "Play it back! Get in!" I came downstairs, still in my pajamas, with my hair pointing to the sky and just 1 sock on, and found 5 trucks surrounding my barn, all unloading, boxes and boxes. It looked like I owned a furniture store, a pharmacy, a market, and an electronics store, all at the same time. That's when I saw it. At the back, with a clipboard in her hand and a tablet hanging around her neck, the woman who bought the ranch 3 lots above mine, the same woman who complained that my rooster crowed before 6 and aggressively interrupted her sleep. She was coordinating the operation as if she were an Amazon Prime manager. I went up to her. I didn't shout, just with that look of someone laughing nervously, like someone who thinks they've been pranked. I asked her what was going on, and she said, "Oh, I thought you didn't use the barn anymore. It's all a bit abandoned, so I've rented it out to a partner company to store some products for a few days. Temporary, of course, but if you want a percentage, we can talk about profits. All shared." Shared. She used that word as if it were synonymous with generosity, as if it were normal to occupy someone else's property, bring in an entire logistics operation without asking permission, and still offer a commission. I stood there in silence. You know that kind of silence that only exists between extreme indignation and cynical laughter? That's right. I went into the barn. It was unrecognizable. Where once there had been straw, hay, and an old motorcycle that I'd been promising to fix since 2012, now there were piles of plastic boxes stacked up, some with a logo, others with nothing. Fragile signs, packaging smelling of chemicals. She even had a minibar installed. The woman turned my barn into an industrial warehouse and even thought she was doing me a favor. I didn't argue back. I didn't argue. There was nothing I could say at that moment that would have more impact than what I was already planning to do. I took a deep breath, got out of there, and went straight into town. I bought 3 farm gate padlocks, heavy ones, the kind you use to lock up a wild ox stall. I went to the market, bought dried meat, charcoal, and 3 cans of canned corn. Then I went to the marina. I borrowed a friend's boat and left the house key with my trusted neighbor. I returned in the late afternoon, alone, on my plot of land. I waited for the trucks to unload. I waited for everyone to leave. The woman was gone. The delivery men had left everything open, as usual, because someone from the warehouse gets it later. The only person from the warehouse there was me. I closed the barn doors, hard, each one creaking as if they knew about the revenge. I locked the 3 padlocks. I put a double chain on the back door. I put up a private property sign and turned off the Wi-Fi signal. I went fishing. 7 days. No cell phone, no email, no honking, no label, no box. Just fish, warm beer, and the sound of the bush swaying in the wind. My only commitment was to silence. I returned home on Sunday, before the sun had set. The dirt road looked more orange than ever, as if even the sky was conspiring to make everything more cinematic. The car climbed slowly, each stone on the way, reminding me that the world had been on pause for 7 days. I was still smelling of the river, with a slightly tanned face and my soul clear of the noise of the city. The kind of silence that only exists when you leave everything behind and pretend that the world has disappeared with you. Only the world didn't disappear. It waited. And from what I found at the entrance to my plot, he'd gone berserk. In front of the barn, a queue, not of cars, but of people. Some sitting on the ground, others standing with cell phones in their hands, others sweating and trying to hide from the sun with cardboard boxes on their heads. There were delivery men. There were transport company supervisors. There was a woman crying over an invoice. And in the middle of it all, there was her, the visionary of chaos, the manager of nothing, the woman in heels sinking into the farm mud as if she were in rural Times Square. I parked slowly. Nobody noticed at first. I stared out of the window at the kind of chaos that only a crazy plan can cause when it meets real resistance. The side fence was half open, and I saw that someone had tried to get in through the back door of the barn. The chain was taut, the latch dented. They'd tried to force the lock. No success. The boxes were all inside, sweating from the heat, with the plastic already starting to warp. The woman came walking towards me as if she had just finished a marathon. Her hair was up in a bun, her glasses were crooked, and she had that "this is all your fault" look, even though she had dug the grave herself. She stopped in front of me, gasping for breath, and let it out. "This is an absurd violation. You locked up products that aren't yours. The company will sue you for commercial obstruction. That's misappropriation." I looked at her with the calm of someone who has spent the week fishing for tilapia and seeing shooting stars. I took a deep breath and said, "You invaded private property, set up an illegal operation without a contract, without permission, and you still want to lecture me on legality." She was silent for 2 seconds, long enough for us to hear a delivery man vomiting behind the truck. The smell of the sun hitting plastic packaging was unbearable. And the boxes. The boxes began to show the first signs of the apocalypse. Some of them apparently contained food, vegan proteins, which, according to the labels, couldn't be kept above 25 degrees Celsius. The barn easily hit 40 degrees Celsius that week. The plastic softened, the contents swelled, and a thick, slightly green liquid began to leak out. It looked like alien goo, and it oozed between the pallets as if it had a life of its own. A delivery man approached, with the face of someone who no longer expected dignity at work, and commented to no one in particular. "There's a box that burst at the bottom. There was something alive in there. Now I don't know if it's dead or mutated." The woman snorted. She tried calling someone on her cell phone. She complained to the carrier, to the partner company, to the universe, but nobody answered. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants to get involved with a mistake that was born crooked, grew wrong, and ended up stinking. The most tragic and comical thing was when the company's regional supervisor showed up. A guy in a sweaty suit, his hair stuck to his forehead, and the wide eyes of someone who already knew that his career was going to die. He didn't argue. He didn't fight. He just asked, almost begged, "Can you please tell us who is legally responsible for the space?" She tried to explain that it was an informal partnership, but the young man was already taking photos, sending audio to the company's group and muttering, "This will go to the International Ombudsman." That night, the dirt road turned into an emergency evacuation parade. The trucks returned, this time not to deliver, to collect. But they were no longer organized. The boxes were deformed, wet, some torn. One of the drivers slipped on a puddle of fermented vegetable protein and hit his head on the ground. The ambulance was called. Meanwhile, the woman disappeared. She disappeared into the chaos, probably too ashamed to admit her failure, but too proud to apologize. A delivery man said he saw her driving away in a black car, with the windows blacked out, and her face stuck in her tablet. as if she wanted to mentally delete everything that had happened. It took me 2 days to clean the barn. The smell of biodegradable became legend. The rat that appeared dead in the corner became a hero in the neighbors group. The gourmet barn meme circulated the internet with force. But she hadn't finished the show yet. Because when people like that lose for good, the next step isn't regret, it's dumb revenge. 3 days after the emergency removal of the boxes, the barn was almost in order. I gave it a good clean with a hose, soap, and disinfectant, and even put in a eucalyptus-scented diffuser, just so I wouldn't run the risk of any memories of that organic tragedy following me. The rats disappeared, the bats went back to their corner, and even the old farm cat appeared again, as if waiting for the end of the apocalypse to retake his throne. I thought the woman had given up. Maybe she was locked in a spa, trying to rediscover her emotional balance with yoga and detox juice, that she had accepted that the rural world is not the territory of people who think they can turn any structure into a branch of corporate chaos. But of course not. With that kind of person, silence is always too noisy. On Friday, another envelope arrived. One of those with a handmade stamp and the smell of lavender perfume with a note of authoritarian command. On the cover, an inscription in cursive, "Invitation to Extraordinary Logistics Reconciliation Meeting, Unit C." Just reading it gave me brain cramps. The content? A 4-page letter printed on special paper, one of those thicker sheets that look like a diploma. She explained that, due to recent operational misunderstandings, she was organizing a meeting to discuss alternative, collaborative, and innovative solutions for the shared use of rural space for commercial purposes. Translation: she wanted to go back. She wanted to take back the barn. Only now, with a cooperative speech and a self-help slide. On Saturday, the scene repeated itself. She showed up at the gate with a folding table, a portable projector, and a Bluetooth speaker. She was dressed in a beige dressing gown with gold details, as if she were giving a talk to millionaire CEOs, not to 5 neighbors who had come for the gossip. A banner hung in the background. The new era of ethical shared storage. Yes, she had a banner made. With the projector on, she began her presentation. Slide by slide, each one more unbelievable than the last. There was a logistics satisfaction graph, a made-up statistic saying that 82% of residents would support initiatives to use private space together for community benefit, and even a timeline called "Towards the Sustainable Future of Distribution." On one of the slides, she put a photo of the barn with a vintage filter and the caption, "Maximum Untapped Potential." Where did she get this stuff? Nobody knew. Perhaps from some dubious online course. Maybe from a self-help book written by someone who lost her job in the stationery industry. But she spoke as if she was sure she was the pioneer of a movement. What happened was regrettable, yes, but it was also a learning opportunity. Turning lemon into lemonade, as they say. The issue now is not one of guilt, it's about construction. The woman used words like transition, co-creation, and multidimensional solutions environment. It sounded like she was selling an emotional pyramid with a focus on containers. The audience? 2 curious ladies who thought it was a health lecture, a couple from the lot next door who came just to laugh, and a teenager who was there for the Wi-Fi. The ending was worthy of a Mexican soap opera. She proposed an experimental model of mutual trust, where residents could rent unused parts of their properties through a contract of respect and joint benefit. She even gave the system a name, RURAL.SHARE. Yes, with a dot in the middle, like a startup. The contract was printed, 3 copies, spiral-bound, optional digital signature, and the cherry on top? A clause stating that properties that have a previous history of non-formally regulated logistical use will automatically be considered a priority in the project pilot. In other words, she wanted to use the barn again, now with an imaginary stamp. The staff left without signing anything. One of the neighbors, before leaving, left a folded note on her desk. All it said was, "Fewer slides, more sense." The next day, nobody mentioned it. No comments in the community group, no emails, no renewed invitations. It was as if the woman had given a presentation to an invisible committee of unicorns. Only the unicorn didn't show up, and reality came calling. And when she realized that even with this performance she couldn't win back the space, the mask fell. Because the problem was never logistics, it was control. And when someone like her loses control, she doesn't accept it. She sabotages it. The following week, the barn became a target. First, the back gate showed up with scratches. Then, the wires to the camera I had installed were cut. One day, I found a cup of dark liquid on the floor of the driveway. When I smelled it, it looked like old coffee mixed with something. I tested it. It was oil. It wouldn't come out from underneath. It was going to come out loud, if only with the smell of frying and desperation. The sabotage wasn't just symbolic. It became practical. A few days after the meeting of the magic slides, the little accidents began. A truck pulled up in my driveway, claiming it had been called to collect a new shipment from the Unit C warehouse. The driver showed the address. Her name, my address. It wasn't a mistake. It was insistence. The other morning, I found a banner hanging on the front gate. This site is of community logistical interest. Respect the social pacts. The banner was made of white cloth, hand-painted and attached with wire. It was there, swaying in the wind, as if someone had declared war. I even considered filing a police report. But the town marshal, who already knew the woman's reputation well from a story involving chickens, a fire alarm, and a false report of mint theft, just laughed. He told me to keep filming and collecting evidence. Things only went further downhill when she launched her last card. The Rural Festival of Sustainable Entrepreneurship. Yes, that was the full name. She distributed flyers in the neighboring town, created a Facebook event with artwork made on Canva, and even promised workshops on autonomous production in idle environments, which, in plain Portuguese, meant using other people's barns without paying. He put the barn on the poster with an old photo before the box apocalypse. He changed the background, added a sunset filter, and wrote underneath, "Model space for a shared future." The event promised talks by innovative agri-mentors, sales of local products, food trucks, live music, and a roundtable discussion on emotional logistical capital. Yes, she mixed an agricultural fair with Instagram coaching. On the day of the festival, the whole town knew, not out of interest, but out of mockery. Everyone wanted to see how far the madness would go. A group of teenagers made T-shirts with the slogan, "Celero 4.0, no permission and no idea." People selling popcorn at the entrance. A woman handing out protest leaflets with the phrase, "The rural also has a limit." When she arrived, it was as if she was entering a stage. High heels digging into the mud, a moss-green dress that looked like it had come out of a 2010 ecological clothing catalog, and a folder in her hands full of proposals to transform idle structures into community growth centers. She stood in front of the barn, waiting for the guests, but nobody showed up, not even the food trucks, not the agro-mentors, not even the conversation circle, just the neighbors laughing behind their windows, and a dog that took advantage of her carelessness to pee on the event banner. He stayed there for about 20 minutes, pretending not to care. She tried to open the gate, which was still locked. She was talking loudly on her cell phone. Yes, there was a logistical setback, but the essence of the project remains intact. She seemed to be trying to convince herself that she was still in control of something. The police were called, but not by me, by herself. She said she was being prevented from holding an event of community relevance by a hostile resident who has hijacked a space for collective use. The policeman, a young man who would probably rather be solving a bicycle theft, listened with a bored look on his face. When she had finished, he just asked, "Do you have a contract, paper, Any document authorizing the use of this place? She remained silent. She blinked 3 times. She tried to change the subject. It's not about paper. It's about vision. It's about social impact, about legacy. The policeman took a deep breath, looked at me, and after another 10 minutes of pointless explanations, he said, "Ma'am, this place is private property. There is no event here today. You'll have to leave." She left, with slow steps, as if she were at a funeral where she herself was the deceased, and the only one clapping was the dog from before, who came back to pee in her backpack. 2 days later, the event profile was deleted. The flyers were gone, and the woman finally announced that she was moving. She said that the city wasn't ready for her visionary proposal, and that she had been persecuted by backward minds who don't understand the revolution of the intelligent use of space. The neighborhood threw an informal party, a collective barbecue, warm beer, and jokes with names like Barn Startup, Hey Coach, and Logistics of Madness. The for sale sign appeared on her land the following week. They say she tried to rent it out for a while, offering it as a multi-use space with potential for e-commerce and sensory experiences. I never saw the woman again, but every time I walk past the barn and hear the wind whistling through the old boards, it feels like the place is breathing again. No boxes, no crazy plans, no borrowed energy, and above all, no emotional community logistics startup. And if you liked this video, don't forget to leave a comment and a like.